Hi, everyone. Rainn Wilson, Shabnam Mogharabi. Thanks so much for having us. I'm going to Steve Harvey this shit right now. Elon Musk! No, I'm not really. But what I wanted to say, you know what? We're ending. It's been a long day. There's been a lot of networking. Let's, everyone stand up. Stand up. Come on, put your phones down. No one wants to see your footage of the guy who played Dwight on a stage. Put your phone down. All right, let's put your hands in the air. Can everyone just take a deep breath, please? We always forget to breathe. And you know, it's interesting. I was talking to this Buddhist monk who says that in his particular discipline, it's the number of breaths, that you are given an allotted number of breaths in your life to breathe. I thought that was very kind of sad and macabre and scary, but it's one of the reasons that I think so much breath work happens in meditation, because we're slowing down the breath. So let's just take one big, deep, huge, slow breath. All right, now sit down, shut up. I want to say that we're here talking about Soul Boom, which was a book that I wrote. It's called Why We Need a Spiritual Revolution. And we are co-authors of the Soul Boom workbook. She's going to tell you all about this. But you might be wondering, like, why are we here talking about spirituality? And I think it's really important to understand let's define some terms. I'm not talking about any particular religious faith. I'm not talking about any particular organized religion. When I mean spirituality, when I say spirituality, I'm talking about the universal human values that we all love and cherish and feel are sacred. And they underpin and underlie all of the work that we're doing in innovation, in social impact, and in philanthropy. So when we say spirituality, think about universal human values such as kindness and compassion and love and humility. That's what we're talking about. And what those values bring us is connection, and they bring us community, and they bring us service. So thinking about spirituality, not talking about church, talking about universal human transformative powers. So to tell us a little bit more about what it is that we have done together and what we're doing, I'm going to pass it over to my frequent collaborator, business partner, co-director, co-producer of many projects, Shabnam Mogharabi, who's going to talk you through a few things so that we're all on the same page.
Sounds good. I don't have the clicker for talking through on the same page, but that's okay. I'm just going to talk. So Rainn and I have been working together for 17 years. I joke that he is my work husband, which just means he gets late night texts from me that he has to ignore. Yes, so we built a company a long time ago, back in 2009. We built a company together called Soul Pancake. Tagline was Chew on Life's Big Questions, because we wanted to make stories that were uplifting about the human experience. Many people in Hollywood told us this was a bad idea and people only wanted to watch Kardashians, so we started it online. And we were wildly successful. We got 1 billion video views. We made a bunch of TV series that went on to win Emmys and Webbies. And we ended up actually selling the company to a studio called Participant, which many of the films up there, you probably know, they've won a lot of Oscars for their films. We set out to make Soul Pancake to be what we called a light in the darkness of the internet. We wanted to remind us all that we have more in common that we do that separates us, but it was not a directly kind of spiritual company. It had some ideas that were inspired by spiritual principles, but it was never about that. I mean, we made Kid President, who was giving, you know, positive messages from a cardboard Oval Office. So it was just about uplifting people and inspiring people. And then we ended up selling that company. What was interesting, though, in building Soul Pancake is that we actually had a lot of stories that turned into social impact. So we had campaigns that would align along shows we did, not on purpose. Like, this was something that just happened. Our audience said, oh my God, this is amazing. How do we help? And we were like, cool, let's find ways for people to help. And by accident, we ended up making a social impact storytelling studio in trying to elevate conversations. But a few years ago, we sold that to Participant and have both moved on to other projects. And the thing that I think both Rainn and I have realized in the last few years is that our social fabric has dramatically changed from 2009 when we were building this. So I'm actually going to make us all really depressed now. And I'm going to talk about 3 new pandemics that we think the world is facing. So the first one is the rise in distrust in isolating technologies. And what I mean by that is not just our phones. It's not just our phones that are isolating us. Yes, we spend a lot of time doing this. But also what's isolating us is every industry, right? Like you get an Uber now and you can get a quiet ride, and you can order your DoorDash and say, drop it off in my doorstep and don't talk to me, right? I do not want to look a human in the eye, right? So every industry is actively isolating us. And you combine that with the fact that we have a crazy rise in distrust. It used to be that 3 out of 4 Americans really trusted each other. That's down to 1 in 4. We just don't trust each other. We don't trust each other. We don't trust our organizations, our institutions, our media. Trust is at an all-time low. The second big pandemic that I think Rainn and I see facing the world is that we have a proliferation of doom and misinformation. In our industry, in entertainment, dystopian films and series outpace regular ones by 80%. We love a zombie apocalypse. Love them. Kill each other, end of the world, we love it, right? And the reality is the algorithms reward that, right? We see something and we pause on that fight or flight fear and we just want to stick with it. And so the algorithms reward this doom and misinformation that we're bombarded with. And the third pandemic that we think we're facing is a crisis of meaning. The whole world will tell us that we are fueled by caffeine and righteous indignation right now, which feels really true. But Pew Research actually studies this, and historically what gives Americans meaning is their family and friends, work and career, and faith and religion. That's it. That's where we get our sources of meaning in life from. And yet all 3 of those areas are under attack. Church attendance is down. We have fewer friends than ever before. People are quiet quitting. Every area that gives our lives meaning is under attack. And so, now that we're all sufficiently depressed about the state of our social fabric, you can enter Soul Boom, which is the new company. We cannot get away from these soul-named companies. I don't know. It's just all the names of our companies have soul in it. So Soul Boom started out with Rainn writing a book, this book, which once you guys leave, there will be a bunch of them out on a table for you guys to grab. He wrote this book back during the pandemic, thought it would kill his career, ended up becoming a bestseller. Who knew, Rainn? Who knew? And then he went on to make a podcast.
I killed my career in so many other ways, Shabnam.
So he made a podcast of the same name, which now is getting 2 million downloads an episode. And we then made the Soul Boom workbook, which was an interactive supplement to Soul Boom. And now we're working on a bunch of media projects around this idea of creating media that harnesses ancient spiritual tools for modern living. And we've got a film that's actually just kicking off pre-production now called The Notorious G.O.D., where Rainn Wilson, the famous actor, tries to figure out if we need God in the modern world. And that's kind of how we think about this spiritual revolution that God is talking about. Our mission is to create, sorry, the font got a little messed up there, but profound, playful, practical media to harness spiritual wisdom for personal transformation and social change, plus jokes. And we want to create a different kind of world through that media and storytelling. And now I'm done. And Rainn, we're going to ask the question, now that they all know what we're working on with Soul Boom, I'm going to ask you the question that they're all wondering.
Yes.
Which is, why is Dwight Schrute, the assistant to the regional manager, paper salesman, talking about spirituality? Why on earth are you doing this?
That is an excellent question.
So why?
Well, go to the next slide.
Oh, go to the next slide. Sorry.
Just for fun. This is one of my favorite quotes. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. I think that's something we can all be thinking about. I'm sure it's all crossed your mind as you've been doing your work. But in all seriousness, this is the question that people frequently ask. Why the hell would a beet farming paper salesman be talking about the soul and God and faith and spiritual journeys? Well, you know, does Rainn Wilson, and the answer is Rainn Wilson has a secret inner Oprah Winfrey. I have a deep and abiding love and passion for these topics because they very personally resonated in me. When I was in my 20s and, frankly, my 30s, 40s, and 50s, and now my earliest part of my 60s, I have had some very serious mental health struggles with anxiety, with panic attacks, with depression, with overwhelm, with addiction. And back in the 90s, anyone remember the 90s? Anyone? It was fun. The 90s was good. But there weren't podcasts about mental health. There weren't influencers on TikTok talking about wellness. There weren't podcasts, there weren't apps, interactive anxiety apps and meditation apps. And in fact, therapy was only the purview of the very rich. I mean, the only person I can think of who was undergoing therapy at that time was Woody Allen. And we all know how that turned out. So so I did the only thing I knew to do. I had grown up a member of the Baha'i faith, and as a Baha'i, I knew that there was truth to be found in all of the world's religions. So I undertook a study of spirituality in depth, not from some kind of academic perspective, but really because I was in anguish. I was hurting, I was scared, and I needed a way out. So in reading the Bhagavad Gita and the Dhammapadas of the Buddha and the Bible and the Quran and studying, learning to meditate, this has helped me get through some really arduous times. So this is why Dwight is talking about spirituality. And then as I was pursuing my career as an actor, I reached this very interesting phase as we were starting Soul Pancake where it's like, wait a second, this seems like an odd dichotomy. I'm playing this really annoying comedic character, and yet I want to study, the underpinnings of the meaning of life, what's going on. And it took several years, but I had an epiphany that really it's all the same, that in playing a comedic character, that helping to tell stories, helping to make people laugh, I'm using my God-given talents and faculties to try and uplift the world and put smiles on people's faces. And that's the same thing that someone does when they're in a faith community, in a church, being of service, that really there is no differentiation between art and faith and service, and that it's really all one. And that's what we try and do at Soul Boom, plus jokes. We bring on a lot of comedians who are unafraid to talk about mental health issues, thank God, and engage in a lot of deep, meaningful conversations.
And you mentioned The Office, so I'm going to ask about The Office. The Office really helped millions of people. What do you think the impact of kind of storytelling can be on changing culture, given how many people, I'm sure here, I've been with you and people come up to you and it's like, The Office changed my life, right? So, I mean, how do you think about storytelling and how it affects change?
Well, this is another thing that we've spent a long time, 10 or 15 years talking about it, is how can we affect change through storytelling?
And it was accidental at Soul Pancake. It wasn't even something we set out to do.
That's true.
It literally happened as a side effect.
That's true. I think that a lot of you are working in a lot of different fields. You're working in education and agriculture and healthcare and all of these different fields that need approaching. I want to answer this in two ways, because there's storytelling and there's spirituality and the intersection. So I work also in climate change. I have a climate change nonprofit with some friends called Climate Base Camp. And as I've gotten really invested in the world of climate change communications, I'm realizing that, yes, do we need to pass legislation to reduce CO2? Absolutely. Do we need to turn to renewable energy sources? Yes. Do we need to fight anti-science misinformation that's out there? Absolutely we do. Do we need to plant more trees and have more restorative agriculture? Absolutely. But underneath all of those issues that we need to do is we need to transform in people's hearts how they feel about planet Earth. This is a spiritual act. That's what a spiritual revolution means. If planet Earth is not sacred to us the way it was to our ancestors, if we're not worshiping Mother Earth, then none of this legislation is going to do any good. And this is
and also willing to sacrifice ourselves for the sacredness of that.
Yeah,
Earth.
and sacrifice ourselves perhaps by paying a little bit higher taxes to reduce methane and CO2 and other releases and to green our economy.
Yeah.
So that is also a sacrifice. So many of you are working in these fields, and I think from a spiritual viewpoint, it's really important to understand, like, what's the story underneath the story? How are we working in a way where we're not just putting Band-Aids on a problem, but addressing the underlying, the underbelly issue, which usually has to do with some very sacred, ancient human wisdom beliefs. And that is, how do we connect heart to heart? How do we increase compassion? And how do we make things sacred? And this is something that's universal between the political right and the political left. We can find those points of commonality. But going to storytelling a little bit, yes, with The Office, we just wanted to make a funny sitcom, and we wanted to pay off our student loans. And we did.
Who relates?
And then we ended up making 9 seasons, 200 episodes of a show that, thank God, here it ended 10, 11, 12 years ago. People are still watching it. People come up and say, oh, my 11-year-old's watching it, my 15-year-old's watching it. New generations have discovered the show, and it continues on because everyone loves to see, and every successful show in some way has at its center a broken, dysfunctional, and lovable family. And that's what the folks at Dunder Mifflin are, and week in and week out, why people turn to the show time and time again.
But they're flawed human beings who still manage to find a way to work together and come together. And I think that's what attracts us to the stories.
And, you know, Andy at the end of The Office says, I wish there was a way to know that we were in the good old days while you're in them. And I think that's the kind of the beating heart of The Office, is you can be under drab, you can be in polyester suits under fluorescent lighting, but really you might be in the good old days. And it has a big, big heart. But for storytelling, there's a story I love to tell, which is how storytelling can change the world. Whales were dying through the 1950s and 1960s at an unprecedented rate. They were on the verge of extinction. And no matter how much environmentalists beat the drum of save the whales, it was not working. Well, there was a man named Roger Payne, and he used to work with the Navy, and he recorded humpback whales on sonar equipment. And these beautiful songs, maybe you've heard them of the humpback whale singing underneath the water, the waves to each other, plaintive, haunting, longing-filled songs. And he recorded them and put them on an album with some classical musicians. And he networked, and this album was released in 1977. It was called Songs of the Humpback Whale. It went to the top of the bestseller charts. It was a top 10 album for a year. It's the largest selling nature album of all time. And as soon as people connected their hearts with the songs of the whale, there was an outcry against the killing of whales, against whaling, against shipping lanes going across whaling routes. And the United Nations swiftly thereafter passed legislation, and whale populations have since come way, way back from the verge of extinction because of a record album.
Because of art.
Because who would have thought that this piece of art, which is a piece of storytelling, could literally have saved dozens of species and made our oceans richer and more vibrant. But that's really the power of storytelling.
Yeah, and I think you know, can I say something?
No.
No.
Also, I wanted to say yes.
So you were saying, you know, that storytelling, especially finding the story underneath the story, those sacred values, et cetera. I find it really interesting when I come to events where I'm meeting a lot of people in social impact, and you ask them why they do the work they do. Why do you do this work? So many people go to their values, right? They say, I grew up in a church that really centered love. I grew up in a family that really centered service. This is core to my DNA. It's what I believe about the world. And yet the minute you say spirituality, people say, no thank you, put that over there. And yet 92% of US adults, this is a Pew Research and Gallup survey that came out last year, 92% of adults in America say they believe in God, 83% say they pray every day. 81% believe that they have a soul or some kind of spiritual essence. Can you think of anything else people agree more about? And we don't talk about it. Instead, we put ourselves in two camps. We say, oh, if you're religious, you must be over here on the right, a Christian nationalist evangelical, or if you're on the left, you must be completely atheist and don't believe in anything. There's this false dichotomy we put that in. And the reality is most people fall in the middle, where we believe in something deeply spiritual, that there is something bigger. There's a lot of values that drive the work that we do, and yet we don't talk about it. And part of the work that we're trying to do in telling these kinds of stories and creating this kind of media is saying, how do we get people to talk about these topics and stories and really dig into the meat of what it means to be human and not have these superficial kind of conversations about solutions when we're not addressing the underlying things that drive us as human beings.
So, Shabnam, what is the Soul Boom Project, the nonprofit arm of Soul Boom? What is its mission, and how are we going to undertake a spiritual revolution?
Well, Soul Boom has two arms. It's got the for-profit media side. That's where the podcast is, the books, the film we're making. And then we've also launched a nonprofit, the Soul Boom Project, underneath the Soul Boom banner. And we've just raised a little bit of money, and we're always looking to bring in more support. But really what we're trying to do is launch what we're calling Soul Boom Circles. And these are local, grassroots communities, conversations coming together to discuss. We've got guided discussion guides, et cetera, a whole database of people we're going out to create, whether it's in employee engagement groups inside of your organizations, whether it's at universities around student well-being. How do we create groups of people coming together to discuss spirituality, deep ancient wisdom, identify their virtues and values that are important to them, and then how do you apply that in your local community? How do you notice what's happening and then take social action inspired by these deep values you've defined for yourself? And so we're launching these Soul Boom Circles this coming summer as part of the initiatives of the Soul Boom work to marry the media with action in your local community, because it has to start at a local level.
Yeah. And
Rainn, I have questions I was supposed to ask you.
I know, but what I wanted to say too is that one thing that I firmly believe is over the last 50 years or so, we've kind of thrown the spiritual baby out with the religious bathwater. America has jettisoned religion, and in so doing, and oftentimes for a very good reason, there's a lot of religious trauma out there, people that had bad experiences. There's a lot of judgmentalism and prejudice and bigotry contained in some religious systems, not all, some. And in jettisoning that spiritual baby, we've lost something tangible and real. What churches used to give us was community, transcendent community, a group of diverse people, hopefully diverse people, coming together, seeking to serve something larger than themselves. And a synagogue would do that, and a temple would do that, and a church would do that, an ashram would do that. So that community also was in service to other people and using the arts, music, singing, to lift people's hearts, but it was bringing people together. And as you know, with the rise of social media, we spend most of our days doing this and not most of our days doing this. So this is one way. The Soul Boom Circles is just the beginning of what we want to start a viral project of bringing people together. Because the answer to one of the crises that was not mentioned at the top of Shabnam's, one of the pandemics of her presentation, is the lack of hope. 50% of people under 25 do not believe that hope or change is possible. They don't believe change is possible. They don't have hope or meaning in their lives. So we can certainly give them hope and meaning through some kind of, let's say, political action, and that's great. Some of the greatest changes that have happened in our country are because of political action. But what the world's great faith traditions and wisdom traditions have always done is connected our hearts to the deepest possible meaning, the deepest possible hope. And we have to believe in this human family. We have to believe that we can overcome this false dichotomy of like the religious right and the secular atheist left having nothing in common. We can find those precious points of unity between us and start to build coalition there.
And I know we're out of time. Yeah, definitely.
Wait. Steve Harvey got 40 minutes. We're going another half hour.
I just want to bring it back to the theme of the conference, because we didn't hit the theme of the conference, but the theme of the conference is meeting the moment and how you move people from moments to movements. So as we're wrapping up, we're the closers. We're standing between them and going home. So we're the closers as they go out into the world and they think about their own work and their own lives and go back to their communities. Like, what do we want to send them out with? I know we talked a little bit about attention economy, and said I thought maybe we can tell them a little bit about what they can think about as they go off into their
speaking of
worlds.
Well, I'll get there. And speaking of attention economy, we all know about the idea that where you spend your attention is where the profit lies, right? So our brains have been hacked by these social media companies, whether it's Candy Crush or whether it's TikTok or Instagram, that, I plan on looking at my phone for 2 or 3 minutes, and all of a sudden 30 minutes later I'm still looking at my phone. Guess what? That was very cannily undertaken by these companies. But now with the AI companies...
Dopamine cycles.
Dopamine cycles, exactly. And now we're moving into the intimacy economy. I was talking to a woman at dinner the other day, and she had named her ChatGPT Morgan, and she consulted it 5 to 10 times a day about everything that she was doing in her life. And of course, as you use these AI tools, they know your search history, and so they speak to you. Oh, that's a great idea. Oh, that's wonderful. And last time you inquired about this, and I wonder if we can tie these things together. They're creating a false sense of intimacy and hijacking our brains in an entirely different way, as we see in the recent uptick of people actually dating and or marrying their AIs.
And you have teens, the kinds you talked about, who struggle, who say that an AI chatbot is their best friend, and literally talk to it about everything in the same kind of intimate way that you're describing. So it's going beyond that, because it's, where social media triggers the dopamine cycle in our brains. I think AI, and particularly the intimacy of the AI conversation, triggers oxytocin in our brains, right? The connection hormone.
Yeah, so, I would say, how do we meet the moment and meaning? I would ask all of you to look deeper than the Band-Aids that many of your organizations might be working with. And I'm not trying to knock any organization here, but to make sure that there is a conversation about what is the deepest possible underlying problem. You're like, a doctor doesn't just diagnose the outward symptoms, attempts to diagnose the innermost imbalance that needs treating. And I think a lot of times that is a spiritual root of a disease, and that has to do with values. And I think in meeting the moment, it's been mentioned several times, the mental health crisis. The previous speakers spoke about it beautifully. 1 in 5 teenagers have considered suicide. So go into a high school classroom, and there's, 100 kids, and 20 of them have seriously considered suicide. 1 in 10 have tried it. So 10 of them have tried.
And a third of them say they have no meaning in their lives.
Yes, and without meaning. And diagnoses of anxiety and depression have gone up 35% over the last 10 years. So this is the pandemic of our age, is the mental health pandemic. So in all of our work, I think we need to focus on this younger generation, and I think giving them hope and meaning is a way forward. How would you?
Hope, meaning, intimacy, connection, belonging, getting them to join, create community, like that is, I think, the ultimate goal.
I've always said the answer to the mental health epidemic is Dungeons and Dragons.
And with that, enjoy. Grab a Soul Boom book.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.